Scrolling Sword, welcome back. We just read chapters 14 through 16 of 1 Samuel, and I want to focus in on chapter 15, verses 10 and 11, and also verse 29. 1 Samuel gives us a theological tension that should make us stop. God says he regrets making Saul king, and then the same chapter says God does not lie or have regret like a man. So which is it? And the world wants to know this as well. Which is it? Atheists want to know this as well. Which is it? Just biblical critical scholars want to know, what is going on here? Does God regret or does God not regret? The tension, it's not a mistake. It's actually a revelation. God is not, he's not unstable like us, but he is not emotionally absent either. And in 1 Samuel 15:11, God says, I regret that I have made Saul king, because Saul turned his back from following him. God's regret, just to explain it, is not weakness in his character. It is grief over rebellion that destroyed what could have been. God is steady. He's not cold. God is consistent. He is not cold. And in 1 Samuel 15:29, Samuel says that the glory of Israel will not lie or have regret because he is not a man. And the point is not that God feels nothing, but that God does not change his mind like a panicked, unstable human ruler. God is moved without being manipulated. This is like the sun hardening clay and melting wax, not because the sun changed, but because the material under it was different. God's holy character stays the same, but people experience rule differently when their hearts turn from obedience to rebellion. Think clay to wax. The same holiness exposes different hearts and different mediums and different textures. Our culture, though, often wants a God who adjusts his standards every time a desire shifts. But a God who changes every time you change is not Lord. He is a mirror with religious language. You need to stop worshiping a mirror. The culture is worshiping a mirror of itself, and that is why it is so broken. Saul's failure here shows why divine regret appears in the story, though. The king God gave Israel has become the king who rejected God's word. And God's grief, it's not proof he guessed wrong. It's proof that rebellion matters deeply to him. Sin is never emotionally neutral to God. Sin is so serious. This kind of human language that we see here, this description of God regretting, is anthropomorphic language where God speaks in terms we can understand without becoming limited to us. Essentially, God bends his language down to us without lowering his holiness down to our level. It's like God speaks baby talk without becoming a baby. God chooses the language of his people so he can identify with us, so that we can relate with him. This is the same thing that happened in the incarnation of Christ, and the reason it had to happen is so that we could relate with Christ. God became man, so now we can understand his love and his sacrifice and what he expects of us. So that's anthropomorphic language. And the tragedy here, though, is that Saul wants the appearance of obedience while keeping authority over what he will surrender. Partial obedience is still rebellion when you reserve the right to edit God's command. Don't revise what God requires. Don't revise what God commands. Don't revise the kingdom culture and bring it down to our level, because that's what happens in this time that we're living in. This time wants God's affirmation without God's authority, his compassion without his correction, and his throne without his rule. And 1 Samuel 15 warns us that God's mercy is absolutely real, but he will not pretend rebellion is obedience just because we call it spiritual. God does not bless edited obedience. God's regret over Saul does not mean God is unstable. It means God is holy enough to grieve rebellion, and God's refusal to regret like a man means his character does not collapse under human failure. Saul changed toward God. God did not change in himself. So the question is not whether God will bend his holiness around rebellion. The question is whether we will bend our hearts back under his rule. Love y'all. See you in the discussion room.